Like, I remembered shadowing someone for a day before I was an OT, and that place, like, there was like a lot of toxic like behaviors, like the boss like putting cameras in the office and watching the workers. I felt like my efforts wasn't recognized, and that I felt like my seniors were talking about me behind my back. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Cindy and I'm an occupational therapist in Sydney, Australia. So today I wanted to share with you 10 things that I wish I knew before I started becoming an occupational therapist. So instead of having you go through years of schooling and starting your career and realizing this is not for you, I wanted to kind of help you figure that out through this video. I know the best way to kind of understand whether a career is for you is actually by doing it. So I do recommend you to shadow someone, to assist an occupational therapist, to really see if this field is for you. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about is the salary. So no one really told me how much an occupational therapist usually earns, and I think I always knew that in healthcare it's really hard for us to earn 6 figures and up, and I think the main reason why we enter this field is not for money. So when I started with 59k. And now that I don't work there, I can share my salary, but that was how much I was paid at first, and I was offered 60k, but it somewhat went down because of taxes and things like that, I think. So yeah, I started off with that, and then I also changed my job. Also, to give a bit of background, that was a pediatric role, and then I changed into a youth mental health role, and in that job I got paid around 62k, and that included salary packaging. So salary packaging is what you get if you work for a non-for-profit organization or a government job. So I also don't work there anymore, so I'm sharing with you these figures. And then I moved to a different pediatric role, and I earned around 82k or 83k, I think it's 82. And as you can see, like, my salary went up by a lot, and I think it's because I didn't really negotiate when I started my OT career, and I really felt like I didn't have that much experience, so I don't really want to ask for much. And I'm glad that I didn't ask for that much, but I also quite disappointed with, like, not disappointed, but I wish I believed in myself to get a better offer, because I knew that some of my friends who started off as new grad had 67k or even 71k. So I think it really depends on whether you can negotiate or not. I definitely think that if you have the chance to negotiate a higher amount so that they can give you roughly more than what they usually would give a new grad. Another advice I have is to believe that you have value, and that research around other jobs and see what is kind of like the common salary, and also, like, you can even look at the higher salary that particular role offers in another job and say, like, can you match with this? Because, like, at the end of the day, like, you know that money matters because you have to pay bills, and living in Sydney, it's a very expensive city, so I do recommend you to negotiate for a higher pay. So I would say that as you progress in your career and you have a bit more experience, negotiating is really important, because now that you have the experience, you can actually negotiate more of your pay. And also, with increasing experience, you also have increased responsibilities, so that means that you should be rewarded for your efforts as well. So something I didn't know about OT jobs is that in non-for-profit organizations and government jobs, you get salary packaging. So this means you get 10K or around 7K to 10K more money just because you work in this, I guess, area. And I think it shows that like if you like the benefits, like the salary packaging, it is worthwhile looking into that. But it also comes with a cost as well. Like in my experience, I found that it was less flexible. So if you wanted to work less hours, if you wanted to take a day off, it's a lot harder to ask that when you work for an NGO or a government job. And I realized that your role is quite restricted to the amount of funding they have. So personally, I like to work for private practice in this time in my career because I can actually feel like I'm making more of an input to the business and how it's growing, and I could also like make changes in the company without having to work there for like 10 plus years. And I think that's because in an NGO and in a government role, there's always someone higher up than you, and there's always someone more experienced than you, and it's you're not hired to make any changes, you're just an OT. Another thing I want to talk about is the burnout and the schedule. So I think coming from uni and getting out of uni, entering the real life world, it's really different because we're so used to studying and having time to just chill, and like when you start full time, it's gonna be hard at first. And I even like after 2 years into OT, I still feel burnout as well, and that's because like OT is not an easy job, and healthcare is not easy because you are every day working with different people with different sets of problems, different goals, and different family and life situations. And like if you're human, of course you will like feel sympathy, of course you'll feel somewhat affected by what people are going through. And as an introvert and also an empath, I do take on people's energy quite easily. So I think I try to prioritize my self-care routine, and try to even like take myself out to the park just so that I don't end up like being super drained mentally and physically. Another thing is the schedule. So it depends on which area you're working, but usually it's a 9 to 5 job. So for me, I started off working 5 days a week as a new grad, but as I got more experience, I decided to change into 4 days a week, and this means that I'm working longer hours. So obviously like working long hours is hard because you gotta wake up early and go home late, and that means that most of your time is at work during the week except for a day off. And for me, I personally like to take a whole day off because my weekends is not enough, because I feel like my weekends are for doing groceries, doing my like household chores, and to do like literally nothing. And then I want a day where I can do what I love, and that means working on creative stuff, creative projects like this, and also doing other creative things, and yeah, going out even to go to like a cafe or picnic. So I think I do like to take one day off because I feel like I'm always having a long weekend, and it really encourages me to work really hard during the week as well. So if you work in a job where you can't really negotiate your schedule, I think that is a bit tricky. And I think most hospital jobs I hear is usually like 8 to 4:30, and it's really nice somehow because it's very consistent and you get to finish early. But yeah, I think the downside is that you don't really get to say like, can I go home early, because you're set to like work that amount of hours. I've also didn't know that we can have an RDO, which is like when you work extra hours, you can take a day off or something like that. So some companies offer that, but some people don't. And I think another important thing is always keep track of your annual leave, because like annual leave is when you get to take time off work. So make sure you know how many you have and take some time for yourself. Another thing I wanted to talk about is the work environment. So I have my fair share of different workplaces, and I have good and bad ones. So I will start with the bad and end with the good. So I want to say that like my experience might be different from another person, because I'm my own individual. I have my sets of like preferences, and yeah, so I don't really want to say that you might go through these experiences, because these are just my personal experience. So I would say for me, like when I had a job where it was for me, I felt it was a bit toxic, is when I felt like my efforts wasn't recognized, and that I felt like my seniors were talking about me behind my back, and I felt like, although I knew like that I was still like new and fresh to this field, I didn't really feel supported. And it's kind of like when you start like driving, when you're starting something new, you feel like a bit nervous and anxious, and I felt like that in that job, and I didn't feel like I had a good senior to help me feel confident about entering this field. And I decided that, okay, like this is not the right fit for me. I also think toxic environments happen when there's a lot of changes in that workplace, and there's a lot of people leaving, so there's like a frequent staff turnover. So I definitely think that's like a red flag when you are entering a job. Like I feel like every week or every few weeks, like someone leaves, and I think that probably creates a toxic environment, because the people that has been there for a long time feel like no one is, like they need to have someone who is good enough, and we need to prove them that we will be good enough and will stay. And I think I didn't know what a toxic environment might feel like. I mean, I had one like toxic workplace when I was in my first job, when I was working at a sushi train, when I got scolded by the chef. But I never felt like I would experience another toxic environment in an OT job, because I feel like we're helping professionals, and I didn't think that it would ever be toxic. But for me, I felt like it was toxic because there was discrimination and exclusion of I felt like of me. Like I felt like I wasn't, like there was like a bit of like a different attitude towards how they talked to me, and there was no invitation to things like if it was like a group. And I think I always felt like I was like the outsider, and I also think that the feedback is also to do with my personality as well, rather than my performance, or it could be both. And it makes me confused, because I'm like, is it because you don't like my personality? So or is it because more of my performance? So that was really confusing. And I think after reflection, I do really think that it wasn't the right fit, and that sometimes you just don't get along with the people you work with. And if you can really like just work without having that affect you, then that's great. But I feel like if I was working somewhere, I want to be able to get along with my coworkers, even at a decent level, like of like respect, I guess. And I never want to be compared to someone else and feel like at any time I'm gonna get fired or something. So yeah, like I really think that you deserve like a place that appreciates you, and I don't want you to go through what I went through. So this is yeah, this all my, I guess I just want to share with you my personal experience. So most of my experience working as an OT is in private practice in pediatrics, and I have like gone through a lot of interviews at different practices in Sydney, and I don't want to like name any of these places because I don't really want to like, you know, talk bad about them or anything on the internet, because I feel like this is just my perspective. And yeah, so some of the red flags that I've noticed in private practices is that one thing that I've noticed is that if the business is more business focused, money focused rather than client focused, that means that they don't really care about you either as an employee and your growth as an OT. And I've noticed that is when I go to the place and the clinic looks super nice, and there's a lot of like, on the outside it looks really pleasing, like it looks good in the books, like the clinic's really nice, and they maybe give you like a lot of free stuff like free laptop, free phone, all of these things. But when you really delve deep into like, okay, like how many years of experience does the owner have in your field as an OT or even in healthcare system, and what reviews do they have as well from clients, you would see that it's not a lot. And I think it's because they focus so much on things that they can, like making the clinic look really nice, and you get like, probably the salary is high as well, but the thing is you don't get much training or supervision, or the supervision is not from someone who is experienced. So yeah, that's definitely a red flag. And I also talked to my friends about other like dodgy practices, and for me, like I remembered shadowing someone for a day before I was an OT, and that place, like there was like a lot of toxic like behaviors, like the boss like putting cameras in the office and watching the workers, and if they were to talk, like they'll get scolded through like a messenger, like this like chat room where like, yeah, it's just really weird, and they're not allowed to eat lunch together, like it's just so weird. And then the dodgy part was like, I was asking to be an OT assistant, but they didn't have a pediatric OT on the team yet. And yeah, that's another dodgy thing, is like trying to sell you a dream that's not real. And then another thing is if you see an OT doing a job where they're not experienced in, like for example, like for me, and this is my opinion, like I don't think an OT should do everything. For example, if you're not specialized in home modification, don't do like I'm a pediatric OT, I'm not going to do home modification without any training. So I've seen a lot of jobs where they say, okay, like we're going to pay you heaps of money, but just do home modification and do all these things that you don't have experience in. And I think that's not good. Like I think if they offer you that job, they should give you a training before you actually start seeing clients. And yeah, so that's something you should look out for, because in Sydney there's a lot of practices where they're offering a lot of OT services, but you're not getting the right training and you're getting offered high pay. But yeah, just watch out for those. Another dodgy thing that I experienced was like when an OT is forced to do another health professional's job, like a different discipline's, like you're doing a role that's out of your professional boundary, I guess, like your role. So for example, doing an assessment that you're not trained in and you're not meant to do, like a diagnostic tool or something, because OTs, we don't really diagnose children or anyone really. So yeah, like when you're when you're like told to do that is I feel like that's unethical. But sometimes maybe the practice is they're out of staff and they don't really, they don't have the staff to do that and they need money. So yeah, a lot of unethical things happen. I also see there's like a blurry line between like what a therapy assistant can do and a therapist can do. So I realized that sometimes the therapy assistant is doing the exact same thing as a therapist, but then the clients are paying like less money for it. And I feel like the therapy assistant role should be just following the guide of a OT, but they should be able to observe the OT through sessions, get trained, and be confident to carry out things that the OT told them to do. But yeah, that's just my opinion on it. I also want to point out that there are some disciplines other than OTs, like I don't want to mention it here because it might be too obvious, but some disciplines where they are not OTs but they open a practice like giving OT services. So for example, because OTs are known to earn lots of money in terms of like NDIS clients, especially in pediatrics, like the pediatric clients have a lot of funding usually. Sorry about the background noise, just neighbors. But yeah, like, so a lot of these places open up like a business. Sometimes they don't have a sensory gym. Sometimes they open up they have a sensory gym, but they don't know what to put in that sensory gym because they're not OTs. And yeah, I think it's just really, that is another dodgy thing that I've noticed. So yeah, watch out for those business people out there, even health professionals who don't know what they're talking about and just YOLOing it, like just faking it to make it. So I hope you guys like this video, and if you guys are new OTs, let me know what things that you wish you knew before you started becoming OT, or if you're like been in the industry for a long time, let me know as well. Put your comments in the comment section below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.